I love talking to people who really share a lot of experience, a lot of just they've lived a life that I know will be really helpful for those of us who are listening in. And today's guests really have that going for them. They have been married for a long time. I'll let them tell you about that. But they've also worked together. They've been entrepreneurs together. They've homeschooled together. They've lived together. They've figured out probably through some ups and downs how to do that and how it all works together. And I've talked to so many of you guys who are doing the same thing, whether it be the one of you is doing books and kind of administration for the business, or you're truly partners in it, both doing very similar roles, or you're running a family farm and just trying to figure out how everything fits together. These are what we're going to talk about today will be really, really beneficial for you. So I hope that you will take the time. Make sure you stay all the way to the end, because we've got a special little bonus that they've created that I think will help you very much as you are just trying to wade through some of the things that could come up when you're doing all of these things together. So now, won't you join me in welcoming Larry and Sue Pruett to the show today? You guys, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks so much for having us today,
Yeah.
Leslie. We're really excited to be here.
Well, you are very welcome. Before we dive in, would you tell us just a little bit about your story and kind of how God has moved you, specifically focusing on that working together, living life together, homeschooling together element that I was talking about?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we've been married a lot longer than I would expect it to be. We've been married. We just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary.
We were married
Yay!
very young.
Yes.
Clearly, so young.
And we were blessed that the Lord led us to homeschooling even before we had our first child. And so by the time she was born, we knew that that was the path that we were going to walk. And we homeschooled all five of our children all the way through. Our youngest just graduated this year. So I guess we could say I'm officially retired from
Yeah.
homeschooling.
Congratulations.
24 years. 24 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And about 12 years ago, Larry was working a job that was, I should let him tell a little bit more of that part of the story, but we recognized that we needed to get him out of that environment. We had a desire to bring him home. And so we found some training and we used e-commerce as the path. And I started the business while he was still working. And then he came home a few months later and really kind of took the helm, the head of running the business. But we've both been involved, and all of our kids have been involved at some level for at least some period of time in our business. And lo and behold, we're still happy. We're still thriving. We love this life. I don't think we would want it any other way right now. And so
Yeah, and we'd actually started our first endeavor was just like a side gig, our first entrepreneurial thing. So that's actually been 20 years ago that we sold our first thing
Wow.
online.
mhm.
So what Sue was talking about there was whenever we got more serious about it, and we're like, this has got to replace our income. And so that aspect, so we've been full-time entrepreneurs for about 11 and a half years.
Wow.
So it started with, I've got a little extra time on my hands, let's sell a few things. And then we kind of got really rolling with it and decided to make that our full-time income. And so, yes, we are together all the time.
Which is a blessing and a challenge.
Yes,
It
for
can
sure.
be. It can be. I know. I know. Well, I'm very eager to dive into the marriage element of this, because I know that's really where your focus is as a couple, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we do that, you mentioned kind of in passing something that I want to go back to. You talked about the fact that through the years, all of your kids have been involved in the business, and I think that that is um, one of the huge benefits of having a family business, of having opportunities that you can bring your kids into. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and how it has worked in your family, what you feel like your kids gained by it, and how it either helped or hurt your family dynamic in the different seasons.
Yeah, and really, whenever kind of our moment where, at least for me, whenever it was like something has got to change from my day job, was a day that I was coming home from work, and it was dark, and I was like, what time of day even is it?
Hmm.
I couldn't even hardly think through what I was going to be facing once I got home and such. And I realized I went by one of those banks at the time and temperature, and it said 9:30 p.m. And I was
Wow.
just like, what in the world am I doing? All the kids are in bed. I've missed out on supper. I've missed out on all these opportunities. And so that was a really key moment for us. And we sat down and said, what are we going to do? How are we going to change things?
Because that was not a rare occurrence.
That was not a rare occurrence. No.
But it hit you that night.
Yes, it just, the realization really hit me that something has to change. And so then as we started developing how we're going to run this business, and when I came home full time, we wanted to get the kids involved for sure. But one of the aspects of our business was that I would be gone like all day, 1 day a week. So I was home almost all the time, but 1 day of the week I was outsourcing products. And the realization hit us then that like, there's really no reason why I have to do this alone. Matter of fact, it'll really be helpful if I have one of the kids with me. And so I started taking one of the kids with me every time I went on these trips that were 12 to 14 hours. And so that turned into, it was kind of, it was intentional, but I didn't realize just how powerful it was going to be. And it ended up being this one-on-one time with one of the kids, and we actually had to develop a schedule because they would start fighting over whose turn it was.
Yep.
And I had to record it, and they would argue with me, and I'm like, here's the chart. And so that time was just so powerful. And you talk about them opening up to me and that opportunity for us to discuss. And honestly, they were very helpful along the way. So it wasn't just all, I should say just relationship, because that's the most important aspect of it. But they were very helpful in the business, benefited from it.
Yeah.
And they got a free lunch out of it, and maybe a free supper if we were
Exactly
on long days. Yeah. So that was just one component of it.
Now, just to be clear, we didn't make them pay to eat at home.
They got to eat out, which was a very rare thing.
I was about to say that's a treat. No matter, that's a treat always.
I would even give them a say in which restaurant we went to, but there were limitations on that for sure.
And then at home, when the product came home, they, the different ones, depending on their age and their skill level, they were involved in preparing the product, boxing the product, getting the product shipped out. And so they all developed a lot of different skills, and some of their giftings were revealed. We have one son that he could look at a stack of products and go, oh yeah, we need 2 larges and a medium for the box that we need to ship. And he just knew it. And so there were
now he works for UPS.
Yes, he does.
Oh, really? Excellent.
Yes. And so they all developed different levels. We one of our middle daughter actually for a time managed our warehouse. So she developed, the leadership skills that she needs for her future. And there were just a lot of things that came about that were real blessings to the kids. Now there were challenges. It was a challenge sometimes to get them to show up, to walk down the hall and come to work. There were those kind of challenges, but it was such a unique opportunity for us, not only as their parents, but also their bosses, to teach them about what it means to be a good worker, what it means to, work for the glory of the Lord. We say that verse all the time, whatever you do it for the glory of the Lord. Well, this was our opportunity to really help put that into practice in a new way.
Right.
So that was really exciting.
I did fire one of the kids one time.
Yeah.
And that's hard. We've been there too. So
and I rehired them a couple of days later.
Yeah.
But
That's a hard thing. And I love one of the things that you said was, and I'm not quoting you, I'm paraphrasing you, but you basically said that taking them along wasn't really as strategic for parenting and relationships. It turned out to be very strategic, but you didn't really go into it with that. And I talk about that all the time because so many times you just have this little whisper of an idea as the Holy Spirit is moving you along, and that is directly answering prayers for insight into hearts or relationships or whatever it is. We just don't recognize it in the moment. But you're able to go a little bit down the road, look in your rearview mirror and see how God so amazingly led every step of the way. And so I really appreciate your noting that, because I think that's a really important point for all those listening in who are so concerned about knowing God's will and how am I going to know what God wants me to do? Just do the next thing. Just do those little ideas that God gives you. You'll be amazing at how he blesses it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. It's amazing how many things in our life have been that way.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think we have always been as intentional as we should be, and yet the Lord has just guided us into these tremendous blessings.
Yeah.
And the job market is so different today than it was whenever we were going into the work world. But all of our kids, the very first time that they've had a job interview, they've gotten the position that they wanted to get, and they've advanced rapidly.
Mm.
Our son at UPS, he got into management very quickly. The first day that he was going in for the interview, but he was supposed to interview and then start working, and they basically told him, "Here's the time of day to be there and be wearing boots." And he said that there was a group of them that came in. I can't remember, 5, 6, 7 people came in the same day. Our son was the only one wearing boots. He's the only one that knew
Wow.
to follow the instructions.
Yeah.
And so it's just little things like that we can teach
Mm.
them: attention to detail. Like, okay, this is how you, right now you're talking to your boss. You're not,
Mm-hmm.
I've changed my dad hat into my
Yeah.
boss hat, and so you can't talk to me that way right now. You can't talk to me like that as your dad either, by the way. But there were certain things that, again, they were not things that we sat down and said, "Oh, we're going to teach our kids all of these aspects of how to be a good employee," or give them that entrepreneurial bug. But that has happened along the way, and I
Mm.
just love that because whenever I'm super intentional about things, sometimes that is important and that's helpful. But it's just so much better whenever the Holy Spirit just takes over, and I just get out of the way and just let Him control things like that.
Amen. Amen. Well, let's segue a little bit now over to the marriage side. So, how has working side by side, parenting side by side, homeschooling, living, doing all of this side by side, what are some things that you all have seen in your own relationship, that are worth talking about in kind of this context?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. Togetherness can be a really good thing. Even before we got started with homeschooling and everything, we worked together for the first year after we were married.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we discovered, even as we were engaged, moving into our marriage, moving into early parenthood, we got a lot of discouraging comments. A lot of people would talk about marriage in a bad light. And one of the things that God just really implanted in us during that time was a desire to be an example of what a godly marriage is supposed to look like. So, in that aspect, I think we've always been pretty intentional. Now, when you're together all the time, it's true that you notice little irritations a lot quicker, and you have to work through them or you're going to be miserable. So one of the things that we do, I think, well, is we lean into uncomfortable conversations and we have them, and we don't let things fester. If we have ever done that, it's never turned out well. It never goes
Yeah.
away. It
Yeah.
doesn't resolve itself on its own.
Right.
You have to work through things.
Right.
And sometimes when I feel that we need to work on something that is to do with Larry, as we work through it, I realize, oh no, it's actually me. I
Yeah.
actually need to
So
work.
often, so
Yes,
often that happens.
yes. And so I think that from that aspect, I think that it reveals a lot of things that could become bigger issues, and could really take you by surprise.
Mm.
I know I've talked with some couples that suddenly they recognize, oh, she's been very irritated with me over something for a long time and I didn't even
Yeah.
know it. Well, when you're together all the time, it's kind of hard to avoid it.
Right.
Avoid talking
Yeah.
about it.
We've also
Oh, for
tried to be
sure.
very intentional about getting one-on-one time.
Yes.
And so that can be, lunches, since we work together, and as our kids got older and the older
Mm-hmm.
kids could
Right.
babysit the younger kids, then we had a weekly lunch that we would go to. And one of the things that, this may be different for other people, but I know some people will say, we're not going to talk about the kids, or we're not, in our case, we're not going to talk about the business. We just decided everything's on the table. we are an integrated people. We're an integrated family,
Yep.
and it's like this may be the best, most uninterrupted hour that we have all week. Let's utilize this time. And so, if there was something difficult that we needed to talk about, we would talk about it. If it was just like some, obviously it wasn't all negative or anything like that. I don't
Right.
want to indicate that at all. But it was just whatever we needed to talk about was on the table for that discussion
Mm.
time. And then we also we have attempted to get away together at least once a year, and really we try to do that quarterly. Try to be
Yep.
very strategic. That's where we talk about our family mission statement, our goals, where are we at with the business, where are we at with the family, the homeschool, what needs to change, all of those type of things. And if we can get away for 2 or 3 days, that is like gold as
Mm-hmm.
far as
Yeah.
the relationship goes and the conversation, and just making sure that we're still on the same page. And if there's any adjustments that can be made, with their small adjustments at that stage, then.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it's
exactly.
out of that time has also come just some very sweet couple times.
Hmm.
That it's the the quality comes from the quantity.
Yeah.
So we spend that time together and talk through the business stuff that we need to. I'm very logistics oriented, so I want to get details worked out, and then after that's taken care of, then it's a lot easier to focus on our relationship and
Yeah.
actually focus on our feelings for each other and express those. And those times have happened integrated within those more what do I want to say,
Organized, or
business, yeah,
yeah,
organized times, yeah.
Yeah.
intentional.
Oh, for sure. And we actually encourage couples to do exactly what you just said: regularly date, regularly carve out time together. And then, we do the same thing where it is a very regular retreat that we take. And, because our family and our life is so integrated. I mean, I've got three adult kids who are at my house almost every day still. It's just like in and out, in and out. Nothing really changed. But which I'm so very grateful for. But because of that, because we're very available, because we are so focused on those relationships, it's very easy, if you're not strategic, to drop the ball on the most important relationship, humanly speaking. And so, really focusing in on that, whether you're working together or not, is critically important for the health of your marriage, the health of your family, because your kids are going to be impacted by that, and so much more. So I appreciate you all bringing that up, because I totally, totally agree. Um, One thing that I wanted to ask you specifically about is when you are working with a spouse, and you noted you're a whole person, you're a whole couple, very integrated, which is wonderful, but there's still, it's very it's very easy to allow business stuff, especially in stressful times, difficult times, whatever, to overflow and taint everything, like you are only that. And so what have you all done to safeguard from allowing the business to kind of derail anything else during those seasons that were a little bit more difficult?
Yeah, boundaries are very, very important for sure. And some of that, we've put some time boundaries on things.
Mm.
And so we've got some good friends who are also entrepreneurs and homeschoolers, and they've got certain time boundaries. Say like 10 o'clock at night, there will be no discussion about business after 10 o'clock at night. And the husband has a tendency to keep bringing those type of things up, and the wife will just say, "What time is it?"
Yep.
and and so whenever we heard that, we thought that is a great idea, and so we will follow that type of rule, if you want to call it that, as well. Um,
I think another thing to bring up is that there are times when, so we are in e-commerce. Like I said, we've done that for several years. So that means that fourth quarter is super busy for us with
yes,
the
Yeah,
business.
for sure.
And so November and December, we are wall to wall. It's all business all the time.
Yeah.
And we just
Yeah.
know that that's going to happen. And we're okay with that. We've talked about that. We're okay with that. For that time, that's what we give our focus to. And as soon as that time ends, we come back to, okay, now we've got to do,
Right.
focus on the relationship again and kind of go back to those time boundaries and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I appreciate that. We've got all of our events in the spring. So we shift that over a little bit and we feel the same thing. Um, but yeah, so you all have a ministry now to families. And I would love for you to tell me a little bit about that and how the Lord kind of prompted you to start that and what it looks like. What's your mission there?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. So, as Sue said, we've had this desire and this passion to be good examples as a married couple for, well, since before we got married. And so I'm a little bit stubborn, and so sometimes that stubbornness can be a good thing, but it's like I'm not going to be like these other couples who have been discouraging.
Yeah.
We're going to be encouragers. And so over the years, we've just taken opportunities, one-on-one type situations. Whenever we have gone to homeschool conferences, it's been a while since we've done that, but we had a bookstore and we would take that to the conferences and to watch Sue encourage the young moms it was a joy for me to see her do that and
Mm,
such. Um, and then we had an opportunity about 10 years ago to teach a Sunday school class at our church on the topic of marriage. We go to a small little country church and about 100 people on a Sunday morning, and we had two couples who were going through a divorce, and so
mm,
that was very dramatic for our church. And the pastor stood up and said, "We need to do something as a church family about this." And so I went up to him after the service and I said, "Sue and I are on board." I volunteered Sue because I knew she'd be on board. Um, and I said, "We are on board. We are here to support you and to help you in whatever you've got." And he said, "Okay, I want you two to teach a Sunday school class." And I said, "No, no, no." I said, "We're behind you. We are
Yeah,
supportive
exactly.
of you."
We'll pray for you.
Yeah.
We'll hold up your arms, whatever.
But he wanted us to lead that and to teach that. And so we took that on and we wrote our own curriculum
Mm,
and we saw the impact that that had on couples, and it was humbling and it
mm,
was amazing. We were like, wow, what just happened here? This is a gifting that the Lord has given us. And whenever we experienced that, and somebody came up to us afterwards and said, "What's next? When are you going to take this on the road?" And we were just like, what? We just didn't have that in mind at all.
yeah.
So this new ministry, this marriage coaching that we're doing now, is about 10 years in the making
Yeah.
of us finally now putting some things together. And we've had the opportunity to coach e-commerce sellers, and many of
Hmm.
those were couples. And we saw what was happening to some of them. Some of them, the business really helped the marriage, and some of them, the business was hurting the marriage. And we have always said that, like, hey, our business can fail. We don't want it to,
Mm,
but the business can fail, but the marriage cannot fail because we just know that we are representing the Christ relationship with the church with our marriage.
yeah.
And so we just decided that, hey, we want to take this to the next level and be really intentional and to do some marriage coaching and to help married couples experience what we have experienced, is that things like homeschooling actually has enriched our marriage. Things like our business has enriched our marriage.
And I think part of the reason that it has done that is because it shows us where there are challenges that we need to overcome. I think I've heard David say, homeschooling will reveal issues that you have. It doesn't really create
When
Exactly.
you squeeze the
Yes,
sponge, whatever
yes.
comes
There
out
you
Yeah,
is
go.
right, right.
Yep.
And so I think that that is part of where our deeper connection comes from, is that we are so committed to making it work that
Mm,
we lean into hard conversations. We do the tough work that has to be done to keep the relationship between us and relationships within the family as good as we possibly can make them. And
yeah.
that has been, I guess, kind of surprising to me that that's how it worked, but I'm very pleased that that is how it worked.
mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. There are so many things we've learned through the years that if we looked at our families through a lens, more applying principles that you would apply to your business actually to our families, the intentionality, the strategy, everything that kind of keeps a business on the right track, it would be, or it is, so beneficial for families. We tend to be very lackadaisical in our approach to the most important thing, whereas we're far more strategic in our work life. And so I appreciate the way that you all were approaching that too, because that is our heart as well, that will help families to understand that when you start approaching things strategically, when you start breaking things down, understanding how what you believe impacts what you do, and really working through all those different levels or layers of behavior, you're able to be a lot more impactful and efficient, and you have much stronger relationships and better standing in all areas when you do that. So but it does not happen by chance. It takes, we're going to lean into these hard conversations. We're going to be very strategic about, business curfews or phone curfews or whatever. We're going to make sure that we are spending time together. These are things that don't happen without a lot of planning and effort, and yet they're so very important.
That's true. You don't fall into a good marriage. You don't fall into a
Nope.
successful business. You don't fall into a successful homeschool. You have to be intentional about doing it. Even though some of the, like we've talked about, some of it has surprised us the way it has evolved. But having the heart's desire to follow the Lord and His path and help our children do the same has led to those blessings. And it's been just an incredible thing to be a part of, and to sometimes I feel like I'm witnessing it,
Yeah.
and so it's been very exciting.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
one of
absolutely.
my
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say this real quickly. One of my pet peeves is whenever I will hear a young couple that they're expecting for the first time, and somebody will say like, "Oh, they're starting a family." I'm like, no, they started a family when they said I
Yep.
do.
Yes, yes,
And so that leads to like our situation now, where we are now retired from homeschooling, and we are getting close to being empty nested. We are still a family,
yes.
and
Right.
so the marriage relationship is the foundation of the family, and it takes effort, and it takes priority for sure.
Yeah. Well, you guys have actually created a really fantastic resource to help couples be more intentional in their relationship, and actually, I think, get over some of the roadblocks to good conversation, to leaning into those hard things. Tell us a little bit about that, because I want to make sure everybody knows it, and then tell us also where they can find it.
Sure, absolutely. So what we created is what we call connection cards. And it's basically, I think it's 56 cards that if you pull out one card a day, have a regular time you do it, over coffee in the morning, at dinner, in the evening before you go to bed, and just ask your spouse the question, and they can answer it in a minute or two. You can answer the same question in a minute or two, and you begin that little bit deeper connection. Some of the cards are kind of light and funny, and some of them dive a little deeper, and you just deepen your connection, because we know that connection is really what keeps us going, and
Yeah.
communication is the path to that, but being connected strongly to each other is what helps keep the marriage strong. And so you can get those cards by going to gen224marriage.com/TTD. And so just we encourage people to go get those, download them. You can print them out and cut them apart if you want to. And like I said, just pull one out every day. And really, in less time than it takes to brush your teeth, you can develop a little bit deeper connection
Yeah.
with your spouse.
And what we hope
Yeah.
is that on some of those cards, some of those days, you're going to go a lot deeper. You're going to talk for longer. But we realize everybody's busy, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you've got young children and just
Mm.
all the different activities and such. So really, just give it a couple of minutes per day and get into that habit, and then you'll start seeing that connection taking place, and then the opportunity for deeper discussion for sure.
Yeah. And we'll put that link in the show notes so you can just click and get there really, really easily. But I want to ask you a question, kind of follow up as you were talking about those, that um, I suspect there are some out there that are thinking, what if both parties aren't as comfortable with conversation? So, you feel like you're pulling teeth or trying to move an elephant just to get the other one, whether it be the husband or the wife, to engage with you on this. What do you say to them to encourage, just keep going? What's your encouragement there?
I would say you don't have to turn it into a formal thing. You don't even have to actually hold the card in your hand. If you're the one who wants that conversation and you think your spouse might be a little hesitant, go through those questions, find one that you think is lighthearted enough that your
Yeah.
spouse will respond, and just ask it. When you're in eating dinner, just ask the question and begin to build that connection. And before you know it, if you gradually get a little deeper with those, that connection will begin to happen more naturally than what it is
Yeah.
now. I don't think anybody marries somebody they don't want to be connected to. And
Right.
so,
Exactly.
although that may be dormant, I think that you can wake that up.
And let's just be honest, most of the time it's the guys who are the ones who are
I
unwilling.
was trying so hard not to just kind of put that out there, but you could be right. There's a chance you're correct there.
I will be happy to say that. And I was very much like that. I am very fortunate to have a wife who is patient with me, even during the time that we were dating. That she really had to really kind of help to teach me a little bit how to communicate, how she needed to be communicated with.
Mm.
And so I would just say to the ladies, be patient with your husband, and just be really open with him to say, hey, it would really mean a lot to me if you'd spend 2 minutes, and we could set the timer on our phone here or something like that. And if you would just answer this question, it would mean the world to me.
Mm.
And hopefully that will connect with him a little bit, and he'll understand that. You may need to wait until, like, if we're World Series time right now, you may need to wait until after the game.
Don't do it in the bottom of the seventh. That seventh inning stretch is not your main time there.
No.
Those commercials are about 3 minutes, so you can just say, like, during this commercial break, could you answer this question?
I still just don't think I'd take my chances there.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Well, that's amazing. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, just tell everyone, I know you've got a Facebook presence where they can connect with you. Tell them again about the cards, and we'll link all of this, but how can they connect with you going forward?
Sure. Our Facebook page is Gen 224 Marriage, so it's real easy to find there, and you can connect with us there. The link to get those cards again is Gen 224 Marriage, and it's the numbers 224. I don't think I made that clear. So Gen224marriage.com/TTD. And then you can pick up those cards, and for about a couple of months, you've got pre-written questions that you can use to help get that deeper connection with your spouse.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for having us, Leslie. We really enjoy this.
Yes,
well, you're very welcome. To everyone else listening in, I hope that you've gotten a lot of encouragement and help, maybe some insights that will help you kind of straighten up some things that may be a little off target, and look at your marriage and everything else that you're doing within your home a little bit more strategically. I encourage you to connect with the Pruetts. Get these conversation cards. They are really, really good. And like they said, there's some that are much more lighthearted, but there are a lot of them that are insightful. And then just pray for wisdom as to how to use them. If you think that this will be something that will be a challenge, like they were noting, just make them your own conversation topics and just use these as a guide or a prompt for you to know how to engage with your spouse. The health of your marriage is worth taking some chances. So I encourage you to download these. They're absolutely free. Start using them, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you on site at Teach Them Diligently, and you tell me all about how these have helped and enriched your conversation within your marriage. So have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.